Hello, this is Daphne, and I am reading the Cape Cod Times for Thursday, the 31st of July. Last day of July, everybody. So we begin with the weather. Today, high of 77, a couple of showers and a heavy thunderstorm. Tonight, low of 64, heavy rain, a thunderstorm. Watch for flooding. Tomorrow, Friday, high of 67, low of 60, periods of rain. Saturday, high of 76, low of 55, breezy in the morning, sunshine and warmer. Sunday, high of 82, low of 61, mostly sunny. And Monday, high of 82, low of 64, sun through high clouds. And for us daytime watchers, the sun rose today at 5:35 and will set at 8 o'clock, giving us 14 hours and 25 minutes of daylight. On to the lottery. We begin with the numbers game. Drawings yesterday, the 30th of July. The midday drawing numbers are 0, 1, 5, and 4. And the evening drawing numbers were 1, 2, 6, and 8. Again, for the numbers game, drawn yesterday, the 30th of July, the midday drawing is 0, 1, 5, 4, and the evening drawing numbers were 1, 2, 6, 8. For Mega Millions, drawn on Tuesday, the numbers are 17, 30, 35, 63, 67, and the Mega Ball is 11. Again, for Mega Millions, drawn on Tuesday, the 29th, the numbers are 17, 30, 34, 63, 67, and the Mega Ball is 11. For Mega Bucks, drawn yesterday, the numbers are 2, 4, 8, 10, 16, and 23. Again, for Mega Bucks, drawn yesterday, the 30th of July, the numbers are 2, 4, 8, 10, 16, and 23. Lucky for Life, drawn yesterday, the 30th of July. The numbers are 2, 5, 22, 33, 40, and the lucky ball is 12. Again, Lucky for Life, drawn yesterday, the 30th of July. The numbers are 2, 5, 22, 33, 40, and the lucky ball is 12. Powerball, drawn yesterday, the 30th of July. The numbers are 4, 15, 35, 50, 64, and the Powerball is 8. Again, for Powerball, drawn yesterday, the 30th of July, the numbers are 4, 15, 35, 50, 64, and the Powerball is 8. And for Mass Cash, drawn yesterday, the numbers are 2, 11, 17, 21, 31. Again, for Mass Cash, the numbers drawn yesterday, the 30th of July, the numbers are 2, 11, 17, 21, and 31. On to the news. From the front page of the Cape Cod Times for Thursday, the 31st of July, the photograph is an aerial shot of a wind turbine from above, and the caption is Vineyard Winds Turbine AW38 at the far southwest section of the offshore wind farm in August 2024, 22 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. One of the turbine's blades failed in July 2024, splintering into pieces and sending debris into the sea. And the title of this article is Step Up or Step Out. And this article is written by Heather McCarran. Nantucket has drawn a line in the sand with Vineyard Wind, with urgent demands, a looming deadline, and pressure for answers and accountability. On July 29th, island leaders issued 15 formal demands calling on the offshore wind company to, quote, change its conduct, close quote, and bring its operations into, quote, compliance with its obligations and public commitments, close quote. The town has given the company until August the 12th to respond. Quote, this is not the first time that Vineyard Wind has seen many of these demands, so we expect 2 weeks is plenty of time for them to confirm their agreement or to explain publicly why they should not be accountable in these basic ways, said Selectwoman Brooke Moore. Among Nantucket's demands are improved communications, inclusion in emergency response planning, and contingency funding. Officials also want Vineyard Wind to pay $250,000 for past communication failures and $25,000 per turbine per day if the required aircraft lighting reduction system remains inactive. Additionally, the town is calling for a $10 million emergency cleanup fund in escrow and an agreement to permanently halt new projects if future turbine-related incidents force beach closures or shellfish bans for 7 consecutive days or 14 total days in any 6-month period. During an hour-long press conference, Moore asserted that Vineyard Wind has, quote, kept Nantucket and its residents in the dark, close quote, by failing to fully communicate critical details in a timely manner about its, quote, massive industrial project just off our coast, close quote, a lapse that, she said, quote, endangers the public and undermines trust, end quote. Nantucket leaders also accused Vineyard Wind of dodging responsibility, saying that when confronted with issues, the company, quote, has pointed a finger at everyone but themselves, blaming subcontractors, GE Vernova, federal regulators, close quote. Tensions peaked in July 2024 when a turbine blade shattered, sending 50 tons of fiberglass and foam into the ocean. According to Moore, Nantucket wasn't notified for 3 days after debris began washing up on the island's beaches, Moore said. Quote, in response to criticism about this lack of timely communication, which heightened the danger to our beach-going visitors, fishermen, environment, and businesses, Vineyard Wind CEO Klaus Mueller promised it would not happen again, she said. Indeed, he promised if there was any indication of a potential emergency, Nantucket would hear about it immediately, close quote. But months later, when lightning struck the same turbine, Moore said Vineyard Wind again failed to notify the town. It was residents who first alerted officials. Quote, there are many more failures to communicate, she added. Despite assurances, Moore said the company has failed to involve Nantucket in designing emergency plans or improving coordination, and claimed it has also delayed environmental reporting related to the blade incident. Greg Werkheiser, an attorney with Cultural Heritage Partners representing the town, echoed island concerns, saying Vineyard Wind has, quote, failed to involve Nantucket in whatever planning it might be doing, including emergency response plans. As a result, Nantucket is demanding a public emergency planning process within 2 months and inclusion in any future response design. Quote, the community should be able to know, review, and give feedback on how the company will handle another such crisis, he said. Nantucket's night sky is another central issue. Under the Good Neighbor Agreement signed 5 years ago, Vineyard Wind committed to installing an aircraft detection lighting system that activates only when low-flying aircraft pass over the wind farm. Yet, quote, Nantucket residents have dealt with dozens and dozens of red lights constantly blinking throughout the night sky, said Werkheiser. He said the company has not met multiple targets for activation, pointing at technical issues and blaming partners and subcontractors. Quote, "We're publicly demanding that Vineyard Wind take accountability for its failure to timely reduce the turbine lighting and stop polluting the Nantucket sky," he said. In response to the town's demands on July 29th, Vineyard Wind emphasized that a recent settlement agreement already addressed the turbine blade incident. Quote, "Earlier this month, Vineyard Wind, GE Vernova, and the town of Nantucket agreed to a settlement that resolved all claims and any harms related to the 2024 blade incident," a company spokesperson said. Although Vineyard Wind is not a signatory on the settlement, it is listed as a third-party beneficiary. The company added that it will continue to comply with all state and federal permitting requirements and coordinate with the town, quote, "consistent with the Good Neighbor Agreement," close quote. Quote, "Following the conclusion of the settlement process, Vineyard Wind has anticipated resuming traditional communications and coordination with the town in a manner that supports a productive dialogue," the spokesperson said. Nantucket leaders are pressing federal regulators, including the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, to enforce the company's commitments. And they're calling on state and federal elected officials to stand with the island in its demands. Moore warned that the company is setting a dangerous precedent, saying, quote, "If you treat your project host's community as an afterthought, you create a bad precedent for the industry that needs to succeed in the right ways to address climate change," close quote. According to Moore and Werkheiser, Vineyard Wind's approach since the blade failure, and more recently since the federal election, has been to, quote, "essentially go into hiding," close quote. Moore agreed, saying, quote, "We believe that they are concerned about the change in policy at the federal level and drawing scrutiny from the new administration. But hiding is not the solution," she said. Despite the tensions, Nantucket leaders are not ready to exit the Good Neighbor Agreement. Quote, "At this time, we believe that withdrawal from the CBA would actually weaken our town's position," Moore said, explaining that, quote, "walking away from this agreement would prove to be a symbolic gesture only that would not provide additional legal recourse to reduce the effects of these projects on Nantucket," close quote. In a final statement, Moore said the overall message is simple, quote, "Either step up or step out of our community and the waters off our shore," close quote. Cape Priest changes plea after April crash, sentenced to probation. This is reported by Desiree Nick-Farjan. A Cape Cod priest was sentenced in May to probation and temporary loss of his driving license after changing his plea on the charge of driving under the influence in an April 25th one-car crash in Yarmouth. On May 9th, Christopher Hughes of Sandwich received a sentence in Barnstable District Court of 1 year of probation, assignment to a 24D program, loss of license for 45 days, and fees of up to $600, according to the court records. By agreeing to complete the 24D program, also referred to at the Massachusetts Impaired Driving Program, MID, Hughes only had a license suspension of 45 days, as opposed to a year-long suspension, according to his attorney, Peter Lloyd. After the crash, at his April 28th arraignment, Hughes entered a plea of not guilty to 3 charges, including operating under the influence, marked lane violation, and driving under the influence, according to court records. He was released on personal recognizance. On May 9th, he changed his plea to admission to sufficient facts. As a result of the change of plea, the charge of driving under the influence was continued without a finding. The charge of negligent operation of a motor vehicle was dismissed, and for the marked lanes violation, Hughes was found not responsible, according to the court records. The 24D program is primarily aimed at first-time offenders, according to the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. Around 9:30 p.m. on Friday, April the 25th, Yarmouth police responded to a vehicle that crashed into a fence at 56 Route 6A, according to the police report. Hughes allegedly told police he was the driver and that he was trying to answer a phone call when he swerved right, hitting the fence. Police conducted a field sobriety test at the scene with Hughes, according to the report. Initially, he refused to take the breathalyzer test, but later agreed at the police department. In an emailed statement on April the 28th, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fall River said it, quote, is aware of the charges facing Father Chris Hughes, who serves as the parochial vicar at Our Lady of Victory Parish in Centerville and at Our Lady of the Assumption Parish in Osterville, and as the chaplain at St. John Paul II School in Hyannis. The matter is currently under review by diocesan officials, close quote. The Diocese of Fall River did not immediately respond to a request for further comment on Tuesday, July 29th. Hawaii safe after tsunami waves hit, reported by USA Today. Tsunami waves reached Hawaii and the West Coast after one of the strongest earthquakes in recorded history struck off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, but evacuation orders in Hawaii were lifted hours later as the threat to U.S. shores eased. Russian authorities reported little damage from the 8.8 magnitude trembler that struck July 29th, but tsunami waves began arriving in Hawaii after 7 p.m. local time. Authorities in Hawaii braced for the possibility of major damage. Tsunamis can cause a long series of waves, flood coastal areas, and present dangers that continue for many hours. Less than 4 hours later, however, the risk to the Hawaii was downgraded from a tsunami warning to an advisory. There were no reports of serious damage. State emergency management officials said widespread flooding was not expected and that residents of evacuated areas could return home. But they urged Hawaiians to, quote, remain cautious in or near the water, stay away from beaches, shorelines, and out of the ocean, close quote. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, in Chile for meetings, said the tsunami was expected to have, quote, minimal impact in the U.S. Quote, we were fully deployed and ready to respond if necessary, but grateful that we didn't have to deal with the situation that this could have been, Noem said. She said FEMA was at an enhanced level and that the Coast Guard was deployed. Noem asked if FEMA is equipped to handle no-notice disasters, responded with a familiar refrain. Quote, we should always remember that FEMA was established to be an agency that supports local authorities, she said. Our job with FEMA is to come in and support their efforts, and we will continue to do that. But these governors have done a fantastic job being prepared for the situation they face today and then going into today. Close quote. And here is a photograph of a boat and lights at night. And the caption is, a Los Angeles County lifeguard truck patrols the Venice Beach Pier on July 30th amid a tsunami warning. Sorry, it looked like a boat to me, but it's a truck. In California, Los Angeles beaches reopened, and a tsunami advisory was canceled July 30th for San Diego and Orange counties. Still, much of the coastal California remained under a tsunami advisory on July 30th, according to the National Tsunami Warning Center. Tsunami waves began arriving at Crescent City and Humboldt Bay overnight. Crescent City is located along a stretch of the West Coast considered most vulnerable to tsunamis based on previous events, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The waves get amplified in the area and are higher in the city's harbor than at other locations along the coast. Quote, a tsunami advisory is in effect for coastal Del Norte, Humboldt, and Mendocino counties, the Weather Service in Eureka posted on X July 30th. Quote, tsunami waves of 1 to 3 feet are still observed early this morning. Avoid beaches and harbors, close quote. Tsunami waves began arriving along the coast of Washington state, where tsunami advisory was still in effect, shortly after midnight on July the 30th. The Weather Service said, quote, strong and unusual currents were most likely, but coastal inundation was not expected. A tsunami watch was downgraded to an advisory in Oregon. The Weather Service in Portland warned that, quote, while tempting, do not go to the coast to watch waves coming in. Currents can be unpredictable and it will be dark out, close quote. Initial tsunami warnings have been canceled or downgraded in much of Alaska, but an advisory still existed July 30th along the state's Aleutian Islands and the Alaska Peninsula, along an over 1,000-mile stretch from Attu Island to Chignik Bay, according to the National Weather Service in Anchorage as of 2:45 a.m. local time. Currents at beaches and harbors, marinas, bays, and inlets can be especially dangerous in the wake of tsunami waves, and the danger can last for days, forecasters said. Tsunami waves were recorded at gauges along the Aleutian Islands, with the highest wave of 2.7 feet near Adak Island at about 10:21 p.m. local time on July 29th. The magnitude 8.8 earthquake that struck off the Kamchatka Peninsula is now among the 10 largest ever recorded on the planet. With a depth of about 12 miles, the shallow quake was recorded at 7:24 p.m. Eastern Time, approximately 78 miles east-southeast of Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, Russia, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Kamchatka and Russia's Far East sit on the Pacific Ring of Fire, the geologically active region known for intense earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. In a video posted to the Telegram messaging app, Kamchatka Governor Vladimir Solodov said preliminary information indicates there were no injuries, but added that a kindergarten building was damaged. Russian state news agency RIA reported that the Klyachevskoy volcano on the Kamchatka Peninsula began erupting after the earthquake. According to preliminary information, hot lava flowed down the western slope, explosions were heard, and a bright glow was visible above the volcano, RIA said. After authorities in Hawaii urged residents and tourists to move to higher ground and evacuate from coastal zones, initial data showed waves arriving July 29th were less than the potential projected maximum of 9.8 feet. Tsunami waves reached amplitudes of up to 5.7 feet in Kahului, Maui, a measurement that compares to the wave height above normal sea level, the Weather Service said. In Hilo, the wave amplitude reached 4.9 feet. Hawaii is one of the more tsunami-susceptible spots in the world, thanks to its remote location in the Pacific Ocean, surrounded by the Pacific Ring of Fire. Tariffs again skew numbers on U.S. growth, reported by Paul Davidson for USA Today. President Donald Trump's global trade war has again distorted the broadest snapshot of the U.S. economy, this time creating a brighter picture. The economy grew solidly in the second quarter. The nation's gross domestic product, the value of all goods and services made in the United States, grew at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 3% in the April through June period, the Commerce Department said July 30th. But forecasters traced the showing to the reversal of a tariff-related import surge that caused output to shrink early in 2025. Consumer spending and business investment increased modestly, and growth is projected to slow further in the second half of the year as more of Trump's import fees filter into retail prices, reignite inflation, and sap consumer purchasing power. A more telling gauge of the economy's health that captures consumer and business spending but strips out trade, inventories, and government outlays, called final sales to private domestic purchasers, rose a modest 1.2%, down from 1.9% in the first quarter. Quote, underlying growth was weak in quarter two and took a material step down in the first half of this year compared to 2024. Economist Oliver Allen of Pantheon Macroeconomics wrote in a note to clients. Already, the prospect of hefty tariffs has sparked inflation worries, and a slowing labor market has crimped income gains. Although the White House has struck trade deals with some countries, the average U.S. tariff rate has still shot to about 20% from less than 3% early in 2025. Nationwide economist Kathy Bostjanek estimated. Economists surveyed by Wolters Kluwer projected growth of less than 1% in the third and fourth quarters. Trump boasted about the GDP figure in a post on Truth Social, calling it, all in caps, way better than expected, close quote. And here is a photograph of people walking on the street, and the caption is, people are seen walking through Roosevelt Field Shopping Mall in Garden City, New York. Consumer spending and business investment increased modestly in the second quarter. The gain in economic output was artificially boosted by a sharp drop in imports, just as the 0.5% decline in GDP the first 3 months of the year, the economy's first contraction in 3 years, was rooted in a historic spike in shipments from foreign countries. Retailers and manufacturers in the United States raced to order foreign goods early in the year before the new levies took effect. Consumer spending grew 1.4%, following a meager 0.5% gain in the first quarter, but that's half of last year's pace. Consumption makes up 70% of economic activity. Business investment rose 1.9% after surging 10.3% the previous quarter. Company purchases of computers, delivery trucks, factory machines, and other equipment grew a fairly healthy 4.8%. Housing construction and renovation slid 4.6%, its fourth decline in the last 5 months. Builders are concerned that tariffs will sharply increase the cost of lumber, steel, aluminum, and other building materials. Government outlays rose just 0.4%. Federal government spending fell 3.7% as the Department of Government Efficiency team continued its hefty budget cuts and layoffs. State and local spending increased 3%. Here's a photograph entitled Foggy Day, and it looks completely black and white except for the red, white, and blue striped sail on a sailboat. And the caption is, a sailboat emerges out of a fog bank, erasing the horizon July 28th along the mooring field in Barnstable Harbor on another hazy, hot, and summer day. We're about at the middle of our broadcast today, so we turn to the obituaries. There are 2 today. The first is for Robert W. Crowell. Robert Weston Crowell, Robbie, of South Chatham, Massachusetts, born January the 23rd, 1953, and died July 25th, 2025. It is with heavy hearts that we announce the passing of Robert Weston Robbie Crowell, 72, on July 25th, 2025. He was a beloved father, son, brother, grandfather, cousin, and friend, deeply loved and deeply missed by all who knew him. Robbie was the loving son of Ralph and Irene Crowell, both of whom predeceased him. He is survived by his three children, Adam Crowell and his wife, Norma Miranda Crowell of West Hollywood, California, Allison Donahue and her husband Justin Donahue of Needham, Mass., and Sarah Crowell Persecki and her husband Bradley Persecki of Annapolis, Maryland. He's also survived by Susan Crowell and his longtime companion Judith Taylor O'Neill and his four sisters, Karen Crowell Miller, Martha Schiffner, Candy Cronin, and Amy Crowell, and countless friends. Robbie was a proud and devoted father, and his love extended deeply to his grandchildren, who brought joy and light to his later years and shared many treasured moments with him. A skilled welder, he spent countless hours tinkering in his shop, fixing things not just for himself, but for others who came to rely on his work. He was truly a craftsman. Visiting Rob's shop was a highlight for so many. He had a true passion for riding his motorcycle, Shaky, and always loved riding with his Monday night friends. He could often be found reading or tackling the daily crossword puzzle. He loved his Saturday morning breakfast crew, trips to South Carolina, and spending time with his children and grandchildren. Rob enjoyed the simple things. Robbie was known for being genuine and witty, a true friend and a helper to everyone he met. Those who knew Robbie will remember him as someone who made people feel seen and valued. His humor brought laughter and joy to those around him, and his authenticity left a lasting impression on every life he touched. He had a whole collection of Robisms, the kind of lines you never forget. If someone said, "Nice to see you," he'd grin and reply, "It's good to be seen." And if you asked, "Hey, Rob, where are you going?" he'd shoot back, "Crazy. Want to come?" That was Rob, so funny, so quick, and so unapologetically himself. He brought laughter wherever he went and made those around him feel at home just by being who he was. Rob was taken from this life far too soon, leaving a space no one else can fill. To know him was to love him, and to be loved by him was a special gift. May we honor and celebrate his life now and always. Visiting hours will be held on Thursday, July 31st, between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. at Nickerson Family Home, 87 Crowell Road, Chatham, Massachusetts, 02633. Additionally, there will be a celebration of life in the coming months. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to Monomoy Community Services. Our second obituary is for Anne Kenny Chaplin. Anne Kenny Chaplin, born on December 6, 1949 in Boston, Massachusetts, passed away at her home in Truro, Massachusetts on July 21, 2025. She was 75 years old. Anne grew up in Belmont, Massachusetts, the proud daughter of a firefighter. She went to Catholic school and was determined to go not just to college, but on to professional school. And indeed, after graduating from Boston College, she made her way to the University of Virginia Law School, graduating in 1978. She practiced at several Boston firms, including LeBoeuf, Lamb, Libey, and McCrae, McCullough, Stevider, and Pulveri, and Chaplin and Chaplin. She sat on the Massachusetts Housing Court bench from 2000 to 2019. After retirement, she continued to serve the court as a recall judge, working almost full-time hours up until her passing. She loved the law and took great pride in writing just and compassionate decisions in a timely manner. She was greatly admired by staff and peers in the Massachusetts Housing Court and was known not only for her wisdom, but also for her wit. Anne was married to Ansel B. Chaplin in 1997. He introduced her to Truro, and they shared a love of Cape Cod as well as erudite conversation and practicing law. She became a devoted grandmother and was known to quip that although she had no children of her own, she had 6 wonderful grandchildren. There was nothing she enjoyed more than visits from family, particularly if board games were on the agenda and fish, which she expertly grilled in her front yard, was on the dinner menu. Anne was predeceased by Ansel, who passed in 2017. She is survived by her sister, Mary O'Connell, and her husband, Mark O'Connell, 2 nephews, and her niece. Anne also leaves behind Ansel's children, Rawson, Margaret, and Jane Chaplin, as well as her 6 beloved grandchildren. She was preceded in death by her parents, Joseph Kenny and Mary Kenny Curtin, and by Meg's late husband, Mike Arano. Anne will be laid to rest in Newton Cemetery. She will be remembered for her judicial acumen, her wit, and her love of family, friends, and Cape Cod. Calling hours will take place on Wednesday, August the 6th at 11 a.m. at the Newton Cemetery Chapel, 791 Walnut Street in Newton, Mass., immediately followed by a service and burial at Newton Cemetery. Friends and family are invited to a luncheon after the services at Boston Marriott, Newton, 2345 Commonwealth Avenue, Newton, Mass. 02466. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made in Anne's memory to the Truro Conservation Trust. Groups over $360 million in CFPB payouts at risk. Reported by Reuters. Recent actions by the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau have reversed or jeopardized more than $360 million in compensation paid to consumers allegedly harmed by financial companies, an analysis by Consumer Group said on July 29th. The compensation relates to allegations of predatory practices by lenders, student loan servicers, money transfer businesses, and others pursued by the CFPB in recent years. The latest estimate from the Consumer Federation of America and Student Borrower Protection Center adds to what critics of President Donald Trump's administration say is the mounting cost to ordinary people from his clampdown on the CFPB. In June, the 2 organizations also said the CFPB's rollback of regulations on overdraft and credit card late fees and the dismissal of enforcement cases would increase consumer costs by $18 billion. Representatives of the CFPB did not respond to a request for comment. The agency's leaders have said they are changing the agency's focus and have criticized prior enforcement actions as politicized and unfair attacks on free enterprise. The agency now says it can meet its obligations under the law with about 90% fewer employees. According to the analysis released July 29th, recent CFPB actions to revise or cancel consumer payouts due from settlements dating back as far as 2023 with the Navy Federal Credit Union, the leading arm of Toyota, National Collegiate Student Loan Trusts, and the money transfer company Wise together account for more than $120 million. The authors, former top CFPB officials Eric Halperlin and Allison Price, say these reversals cast doubt on dozens of other prior cases involving more than $244 million in further consumer payouts that the CFPB may have yet to approve or process, such as funds arising from actions against Cash App parent Block and student loan processor Navient. Congress created the CFPB after the 2008 financial crisis to protect consumers from unfair, deceptive, or abusive practices. Israeli minister threatens annexation. Meanwhile, death toll in Gaza ticks upward. This is reported by Mayan Lubel and Nadal Ag Mughrabi for Reuters. And here is a photograph showing people bowing their heads and a young man with his arms around a crutch. And the caption is, "A funeral takes place at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, Gaza Strip, on July 30th for Palestinians who were killed, according to medics, by Israeli fire while trying to receive aid a day earlier." Israel could threaten to annex parts of Gaza to increase pressure on the militant group Hamas, an Israeli minister said on July 30th, an idea that would deal a blow to Palestinian hopes of statehood on land Israel now occupies. The comment by Security Cabinet member Zeev Elkin came a day after Britain said it would recognize a Palestinian state in September unless Israel takes steps to relieve suffering in Gaza and agrees to a ceasefire in the war against Hamas. France, which said last week it would recognize a Palestinian state in September, and Saudi Arabia issued a declaration on July 29th, backed by Egypt, Qatar, and the Arab League, outlining steps towards implementing a two-state solution. As part of an end to the Gaza war, they said Hamas, quote, "must end its rule in Gaza and hand over its weapons to the Palestinian Authority," close quote. Israel has denounced moves to recognize a Palestinian state as rewarding Hamas for its October 2023 attack that precipitated the war. Accusing Hamas of trying to drag out ceasefire talks to gain Israeli concessions, Elkin told public broadcaster Khan that Israel may give the group an ultimatum to reach a deal before further expanding its military actions. Quote, "The most painful thing for our enemy is losing lands," he said. A clarification to Hamas that the moment they play games with us, they will lose land that they will never get back would be a significant pressure tool, close quote. Mediation efforts aimed at reaching a deal that would secure a 60-day ceasefire and the release of remaining hostages held by Hamas ground to a halt last week, with the sides trading blame for the impasse. Israel is facing mounting international pressure over the situation in Gaza, where a global hunger monitor has warned that a worst-case scenario of famine is unfolding. The Gaza Health Ministry reported 7 more hunger-related deaths on July 30th, including a 2-year-old girl with an existing health condition. Though recognition of a Palestinian state is largely seen as a symbolic move, Gazanman Saeed El-Akra said he hoped it marked a, quote, "real shift in how Western countries view the Palestinian cause," close quote. Continued, "Enough. Palestinians have lived for more than 70 years under killing, destruction, and occupation while the world watches in silence," he said. Meanwhile, families of Israeli hostages still held in Gaza appealed for no recognition of a Palestinian state to come before their loved ones were returned. Quote, "Such recognition is not a step toward peace, but rather a clear violation of international law and a dangerous moral and political failure that legitimizes horrific war crimes," the Hostages Family Forum said. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on July 29th said Britain's decision rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism. Israel made similar comments last week after France's announcement. 2 Hamas officials did not immediately respond to requests for comment on the demand for the group to hand its weapons to the Palestinian Authority, which now has limited control of parts of Israeli-occupied West Bank. Hamas has previously rejected calls to disarm, while Israel has ruled out letting the PA run Gaza. Netanyahu said this month he wanted peace with Palestinians, but described any future independent state as a potential platform to destroy Israel, so control of security must remain with Israel. His cabinet includes far-right figures who openly demand the annexation of all Palestinian land. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said on July 29th that reestablishing Jewish settlements in Gaza was, quote, closer than ever, calling Gaza an inseparable part of the land of Israel, close quote. A 2-year-old girl being treated for a buildup of brain fluid died overnight of hunger, her father told Reuters on July 30th. Quote, Mecca, my little daughter, died of malnutrition and the lack of medication, Salah al-Garabli said by phone from Deir al-Balah. Quote, doctors said the baby has to be fed a certain type of milk, but there is no milk, he said. She starved. We stood helpless, close quote. The deaths from starvation and malnutrition overnight raised the toll from such causes to 154, including at least 89 children since the war's start, most in recent weeks. On July 27th, the Israeli military announced steps to ease the supply of food into Gaza, including daily pauses in military operations in some areas and corridors for aid. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said the United Nations and its partners have long been able to bring more food into Gaza in the first 2 days of pauses, but the volume was, quote, still far from high, close quote. Palestinians in the village of Susiya in the Israeli-occupied West Bank said Jewish settlers were attacking them repeatedly and ripping apart their olive groves. Then settlers, armed with knives, set upon their water sources, villagers said. Palestinians in the West Bank have reported growing Israeli settler violence since the October 7, 2023 attack. Palestinians authorities who exercise limited self-rule in parts of the West Bank say the settlers are trying to force Palestinians off their lands in order to seize them. Jihad al-Nawajah, the head of the Susiya Village Council, said the water shortages have become unbearable. Quote, if we do not have water here, we will not survive. They make us thirsty in order to expel us, and their aim is to expel people, he said. Residents of Susiya accuse Israeli settlers of severing water pipes and electricity wires, chopping down their olive trees, and preventing them from herding their sheep. In response to a Reuters request for a comment on settler attacks in Susiya, the Israeli military said soldiers have been dispatched to deal with any troubles and have removed Israeli citizens involved. Booker yells at fellow Dems on Senate floor, reported by Sudishka Kochi for USA Today. Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, yelled at his colleagues on the Senate floor, arguing they were, quote, complicit with President Donald Trump and that his party needs a wake-up call. The exchange occurred on July 29th as Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, Democrat from Nevada, sought to swiftly move a package of bipartisan bills that would increase resources and funding to police departments and officers. Booker objected to the package and offered an amendment that would require the administration to allocate public safety grants without political bias. That ignited Cortez Masto's ire, who complained that Booker hadn't raised his concern weeks ago when the bills passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee on which he sits. Quote, this is ridiculous, she said. This is an attempt to kill all of these bills, close quote. Booker responded, quote, this to me is the problem with Democrats in America right now, is we're willing to be complicit to Donald Trump to let this pass through when we have all the leverage right now, close quote. He also got into a heated back and forth with Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat from Minnesota, who told him that he couldn't just stop bills that come out of a committee and then, quote, allow for other bills that fund other parts of your budget in your state, close quote. Booker said it was wrong to imply that the police bills were not vital to his state. Quote, what I am tired of is when the President of the United States of America violates the Constitution, trashes our norms and traditions, and what does the Democratic Party do? He thundered on the Senate floor. Comply? Allow him? beg for scraps? The Democratic Party needs a wake-up call, he said. Democrats have been divided about how to organize an effective resistance against Trump and break through the cracks of MAGA populism as the party is still recovering after a bruising 2024 election loss. Booker and other progressive Democrats have been urging their colleagues to be more vocal against the administration. Quote, if we don't stand as Democrats, we deserve to lose. But if we stand united, if we stand strong, if we stand with other people, if we tell with a chorus of conviction that, quote, America, what this president is doing is wrong. If we stand up and speak that way, dear God, we will win, Booker said. Affordable housing bill clears committee hurdle. Reported by Andrea Riccier for USA Today. A Senate committee unanimously approved a major housing bill July 29th, signaling bipartisan support for an issue that's plaguing constituents in districts around the country. The Renewing Opportunity in the American Dream to Housing Act of 2025 was sponsored by Senators Tim Scott, Republican of South Carolina, and Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts. The legislation aims to, quote, increase the supply of affordable housing in America, close quote, through a wide range of policies, such as increasing construction, making small mortgages more attainable, reforming the appraisal process, and supporting manufactured housing. The road to housing legislation, quote, would be the most impactful and comprehensive piece of housing legislation since the Great Recession that began in 2007, said analysts at the Bipartisan Policy Center in a summary published after the bill passed through the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee. The bill incorporates part of at least 27 previously introduced pieces of legislation, the summary explained, of which 23 were introduced with bipartisan sponsors. The national housing crisis has deepened and become more wide-reaching. Both parties' major presidential candidates focused on it on the campaign trail last fall, and legislators around the country remained concerned. Sean Donovan, CEO and president of Enterprise Community Partners, who served as secretary to the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the Obama administration, told USA Today in December, quote, there is a political imperative that is much broader than I've ever seen around housing, as nearly every pocket of America, not just pricey coastal cities, become unaffordable. Home prices hit a new all-time high in 2024, with the median at $412,500. Using the traditional lender ratio of 31% debt to income, a borrower would need an annual income of at least $126,700 to afford a mortgage payment on a home of that price. Quote, many people around the country, frustrated with the way we do American politics, wonder, is there any issue that brings this nation together, said Scott, who chairs the Senate Banking Committee during the July 29th session. Quote, I'm here to say hallelujah, we have found one. It's housing, close quote. The National Association of Home Builders, the National Association of Realtors, and the Mortgage Bankers Association released statements in support of the legislation. But even as advocates cheered the committee's step, some cautioned that the bill has a long way to go before it becomes law. The House will take it up in the fall, noted the bipartisan policy analysts, adding, quote, the bill proposes to enhance many existing federal housing programs and create new ones, but does not uniformly propose funding levels for these changes, nor propose offsetting budgetary savings or revenue increases, close quote. Our final story today is entitled Meet the Firebirds Resident Mental Performance Coach, reported by Alan Gunn for Cape Cod Times. And here is a photograph of this gentleman wearing Firebird colors, and the caption is, across a near 20-year career, Orleans bench coach Jay Banfield has worked towards one goal. How do you provide opportunities for people? Orleans bench coach Jay Banfield works a full-time 9 to 5 job, changes into his uniform, and then hustles to the ballpark to be in the dugout with the Firebirds. All because, as Banfield said, quote, "the dream that I always had was to be a part of the Cape Cod Baseball League," close quote. Banfield, who grew up just outside of Boston in Somerville, read Peter Gammon's column in the newspaper every Sunday, where he waxed eloquently about the Cape Cod League. When he was fully established in his professional career, every year he would reach out to the Cape League teams and offer his services, and every year it fell on deaf ears. That is, until long-term Firebird manager Kelly Nicholson answered his call and gave him a chance for the 2019 season. It's where Banfield has been ever since. Quote, "I remember forever wanting to be out here for a long time," Banfield said. "I wanted to offer some of my skills and experiences, and I saw an opportunity," close quote. After Banfield graduated from Stanford University in 1990, a Major League Baseball career wasn't waiting. He played semi-professional, but went no further. He admitted that the game tells you pretty quickly how far you're going to go. Then it's about finding what you can do. Little did he know the impact he was going to have would make change in the lives of tens of thousands of 18 to 24-year-olds. Banfield has built an esteemed career as a social entrepreneur, executive, and coach in the private, public, education, and nonprofit sectors, as well as on political campaigns. That's included a 12-year stint at Year Up, which is a national youth and workforce development organization. It's trained and placed tens of thousands of low-income young adults into careers in the nation's leading employers such as Google, J.P. Morgan Chase, Kaiser Permanente, and Facebook. Quote, "He called and said he wanted to come help us and be involved with the mental side of things, and I said, go at it. And he's doing a fabulous job," Nicholson said. "He tries to add value every day, and he certainly does that." Firebirds' home games start at 6:30 p.m., but if you get to Eldridge Park nearly 4 hours early, you'll catch the players going through their pregame mental prep in a concept called Mind Up. It's something that Nicholson had introduced long before Banfield's arrival in 2019, but he's since taken it to another level. Quote, "He, Banfield, brings the team together, and each day we focus on a different skill within the mental game," UCLA and Orleans catcher Cashel Duggar said. Quote, "Whether that's breathing, visualization, or meditation, it's a lesson to help us find tools to create our own mental practice," close quote. More and more teams across the United States in all sports are investing in and employing sports psychologists or mental coaches to help their players develop strategies on how to perform at a higher level and overcome blocks in their game. Banfield is a trusted voice, not just within the Firebirds organization, but in clubhouses at the collegiate and professional level. That experience gives Nicholson the belief to give Banfield free rein to work with players one-on-one and with the team. Quote, "If you ask anybody how much of the game is mental, you're going to get on the low side guys saying 50% and on the high side 90%, Nicholson said. Quote, "Even having our own mental performance coach, we probably don't spend enough time on it because it's incredibly important," close quote. Mind Up changes year to year, and it's revised all the time by Banfield, who responds to what he thinks the team needs. What remains the same are the principles behind it. That's the tools for athletes to get the most out of their abilities. Quote, "All the tools that I know are part of a baseball player's experience. We try to develop. Some of that is explaining how it works. A lot of it is practicing it, and then it's them getting to develop their own process," Banfield said. Quote, "I'm here to make the most of every day and milk as much out of the experience as I can," close quote. That's all we have time for today. This has been Daphne. I've been reading the Cape Cod Times for Thursday, July the 31st. I hope you all have a wonderful beginning to the month of August.